Yes, I was just gonna say that it's all about this self-awareness that everybody, I think, we're all trying to cultivate. And so in in so doing, you would be able to come to a greater understanding of how to operate within different contexts, because believe me, I am learning experientially that different circumstances will bring out different reactions from you, and that can determine how fast and how far you grow.
To know the core responsibility or the primary thing, because like you said, different circumstance can bring out. But what about when you're placed in a situation or a circumstance that you don't even belong there? You know, like they said, the crab in a barrel. You know what they said about crab in barrel, right? That's a phrase I think all black people are familiar with. When you think about it, a crab in a barrel, they keep climbing on each other and they tear each other down, right? But is the barrel the natural habitat for a crab? Because this is the part that we don't look into. The barrel is not the natural habitat for the crab. So if you place a crab in an environment or in a habitat that it is not familiar with, it's going to do anything that it needs to do to get out of it. So it's kind of like what you call survival mode, or that, stress state of mind. So it's just acting on impulses and these things. So when you take a woman or a man and put them in a condition or an environment that don't belong there, they now have to do what? Focus on surviving. So most of the time, the logical or the reasoning is going to get pushed out of the way, and you're just focusing on one goal: get out of that condition. So going back to what you said about the circumstance, when a lot of us are being placed in circumstances or types of relationships that we don't belong in. So one of the things we would have to look into is, how did we get to those circumstances in the first place? So this is why it's important to look at the psychology of certain things, rather than just, oh, two people are in a relationship, and no, how did they get into that circumstance, that situation, right? I'm gonna read Genesis chapter 2 and verse 21. It says, "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man." So what you're seeing here, the woman was in her natural habitat. Where would she be? She was with the man. The man is her father. She's in her father's house, being provided for and being protected. That's the natural habitat for a woman. No, the Most High move her from one roof of protection and provision to another. So the habitat is still natural for the woman. It's natural for the man. So just as the father, it's natural for the father to provide and protect for his daughter. Another man out there has already that in him to do what? Protect a woman and provide for a woman. So she's just moving from one covering to the next. So the habitat or the circumstance is always natural. What we are living today is a whole different thing, because guess what? Think about it. When you're in your father's house, your father protecting you, providing for you. Tell me about your rebellion against your father. Um, I'm talking about the natural environment where your father is protecting you, he's providing for you, right? He's doing everything that he's supposed to do from a father to daughter's relationship. What would be your reason to rebel against the man that's protecting you and providing for you? Would you have a reason to rebel? Hold on, let me turn off the microphone.
I think that's an individual question, because on the surface, there's no real logical reason. If you think on the story of the prodigal son, he had no reason to demand his inheritance up front so that he could go and live his life before his father was passed away. But his father said, you know what, I'm going to allow you to do this thing. So there may not be a logical reason to begin with, but within oneself, you might say, you know, I feel like I'm being restricted. I feel like I'm being prevented from expressing my true self, and so therefore I don't want to do what my father wants me to do. I'm going to rebel against him, not because he's not doing what he's supposed to do as a father, but just because the nature within you, that tendency or that desire to want to assert oneself, you know, in your own identity, that will make you want to rebel and go out there and do your own thing.
In the context, because what you mentioned about the prodigal son is different from the context of the daughter that's been provided for. With the prodigal son, it's talking about, when you look at it spiritually or consciously, you're talking about a man who has departed from the ways of his father. So, for example, us, through captivity, we departed from our God. Our God. So that was what the parable was about. We departed from our God. So in the case where you are you're dealing with a woman that has not departed from her father's ways. This is why I'm talking about a habitat coming from the crab in the barrel situation. So the woman that's in that habitat, right, that is not departed from the ways of her father, she is accustomed to being provided for, to be protected. So she has no reason, it's not in her to do that. So when she goes into a different circumstance but the same type of habitat, she's been provided for, been protected and cared for, right? She has no reason to rebel. But guess what? It keeps you in a mindset to do what? To honor your husband. Just like I said, you would be honoring your father because he's protecting and providing for you. You are in your natural state. No, when you look at today, right? If a man cannot provide for you, cannot protect you, okay, all the things that your father would have done for you, right? No, if you can do all of that for yourself, when a man comes into your life and is ready to buy you a house, you said, no, I already have a house. He's ready to buy you a car. You said, no, you already have a car. He's ready to buy you, give you a business. You said, no, you already have a business. What place does that man have in your life? So what I'm saying is, remember, the Most High made man in his image, and then the serpent came and remodified the mind of man into his image. So we are living in the image of the serpent. So back when we were in the state of God, of the image of God, guess what? All of this would be natural. What I'm saying now is that a new world is created, is being created, right? So we are no longer in that image. We fell from that image. So I'm saying now, what is it? What meaning does the man have to you when everything that he has to offer, you have already done that for yourself? I'm just showing you how they change something. They change the habitats. They change our atmosphere spiritually. They change it consciously. So this is why it's hard for a man to find his place in a woman's life. Because remember, like I said, if your shelter, your food, and everything that you have was dependent on the man, and that man, all you had to do was to honor and respect the man and take care, protect, and guard what you have. Just like if you buy a phone, right? You're gonna take care of the phone because you know the purpose it serves in your life. It checks your email, it helps you to connect, to check your business statistics and so forth. You know the purpose it serves, you know the importance of it. So you're gonna guard and protect it. You understand? Are you following what I'm saying? So I just want us to keep it within the context of the reasoning. So what I'm trying to say is the world that we know today is not the same world. So when a woman is being given a new purpose that she was not created for, she is now going to even abuse herself because you don't know how to live in that habitat that they created for you, that you are doing all these things for yourself. So the things that would help you to be honor your father or honor your husband, that has been removed with materialistic possessions. This is why when you go back to the scriptures, the fathers, when they have inheritance, they don't give landed property to their daughters, they give it to the sons. This is why most of the time they call the what do you call it, your son-in-law, the man that marries your daughter. Most of the times they refer to that man as their son. because you don't give the inheritance to the daughter, but you would give it to the man that marries to her. Just like in the book of Tobit, when the daughter was getting married, they gave half of the substance to him and to him for both of them and said, okay, when we are past, meaning when the parents die, you can collect the other half of the inheritance. The tribe of Manasseh, they had daughters, they had no sons, and they had to bring this concern to Moses to say, because they had no daughters, so they didn't want the inheritance to go to the other tribes, so they had to marry each other. You understand what I'm saying in the context that I'm speaking?
Yes.
Oh, let me turn off. Let me turn off.
Yes, I get what you're saying. I was responding to what you had said about the question that you had asked, what would be the reason? And so my explanation was on that basis. So while I understood that it may not have been the same thing, there was no particular reason for him wanting to do that, and that's why I brought that up. But I get what you're saying.
A lot of things in our communities, we have to go back to the root. And that's where a lot of people don't want to go back to, because what a lot of them are getting now, it is feeding certain instinctual nature in them. It's feeding certain desires that go against the morality in them. It's feeding certain aspect of their being or their existence that goes against the purpose of God, the will of the Most High. So we are being caught between two worlds, between what we desire and what the will of the Most High is. So that's what the serpent has done to us. He remodified us in his image after the Most High had remodified us in his image. Because at first there was man. And he said, let us make man in our image. So what is the image of God? You're dealing with the morality, the civil law, how to be civilized, how to live amongst each other, amongst one another, love thy neighbor as thyself, among all the other things. That is the image of God. Now what they did was remodified, because the mind of man is programmable. Or should I say reprogrammable, like a computer. Let me show you something. I'm going to go to Genesis chapter 9. It says, and God blessed Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Now, can you think of ways that you can replenish the earth? We know that it can be done biologically through, reproducing. But what about the mental aspect? You can replenish the earth after your mindset. So they teach their cultural beliefs, their spiritual beliefs, their ideology. Once they impose that on other people, that's how you make them in your image mentally. So that was what was happening, because normally when you conquer a nation, what do you do with the prisoners of wars? You teach them your way. So they are now being made in the image of their masters. That has always been the same patterns right throughout history. And that's the same thing. So war is a tool or a method to change or to rewrite the programming of the mind. So when you go back to World War II, when you go back to the Industrial Revolution, right? What would happen was the men were working in the factories. Where were the women? When the men were working in the factories, where were the women? So when you go to World War II, now the men had to be deployed out on the battlefield, right? Who would have to step in and fill in the factories now, making weapons and things of that, powders for the I don't want to call the word. I don't know what TikTok will do, but you get what I'm saying. No, the women, they step out. So guess what? When those men come back home, what jobs are they going to do? So you see, your purpose has been removed and you're placed in a different habitat that does not belong to you. So this is a battleground that we're actually seeing here, and this is exactly, and this changed so much psycho-spiritually that we don't understand. You see you get what I'm saying? So it's just like now, for example, Americans are complaining that, oh, the Chinese, they steal our jobs, are so forth. So when the Chinese take over the jobs, those Americans, they cannot go back and get those jobs. So it's the same thing in the way the home is run. When the woman gets these get these jobs, they're taken out of their natural environment. So now they're filling the spaces where the men would be. And who is filling their spaces? So what was once natural to them becomes a burden. You understand where I'm coming from? So when we talk about crab in a barrel, we're not just judging the crabs in the barrel. We need to know who placed them in the barrels, because crabs do not grow in barrels. They had to be placed there by somebody. They didn't climb up and get into the barrels. They had to be forced out of their natural environment. You dig them out of the holes and out of the earth, and you place them in the barrel. They cannot climb up on the barrel. That's not their natural habitat. So until we start seeing our relationships, or our life's experiences through the lenses of reality, consciousness, how are we going to change anything? How are we going to even fix anything? So we're just going to be at war with each other, instead of, hey, the reason why I'm in this situation is because that person put me there. The reason why you're in this situation is because that person put you there. So we have a common enemy. You're not my enemy. I'm not your enemy. We have a common foe. So until we realize that, we will never change the programming that's here. It's very important for us to understand. So we have to go back to our natural habitat. And I'm talking about that state of mind, understanding our purposes. So imagine if a certain person come and dismantle your family. Okay. Say you go to catch crabs, right? You dismantle the families of the crabs. You separate this one from this one and you place them in different barrels. Right? Now imagine the crab is now relying on you to give them solution to fix their family problems, their crab family problems. You see how simple that sound? So imagine a certain group of people come and conquer us, dismantled our families, separated our families, destroyed our families, place us in different habitats where we cannot function. And then now you're having relationship problems, and then you're turning to the very same people that placed you in that barrel, that habitat that you are dysfunctional, that relationships become dysfunctional in. You're looking to them for a solution. Yeah, go ahead, Empress. Let me just turn off the microphone.
I'm laughing because you're saying something that I alluded to. I think it was last night when I was talking to Come Into Grace, where I was saying, I find it so funny that having been scattered all over the world and taken from Africa, and our ancestors were moved all over the world, and we have evolved, our societies have evolved, and because we don't know ourselves, there are a lot of us who are going to these same people who basically destroyed our families and broke us down and things, so that we don't know who we are, to go and give them our DNA, to have them go and do a search to tell us where we originating from. And then I am of the belief that they are using our DNA in order to specifically craft medications and viruses and things to take us out. I just found it to be so disheartening. I mean, I understand the desire to know who we are, but at this point, I'm thinking that Black people have just been giving away all the ammunition,
Just put it in 2 words. When you say go back to these people, in one aspect is family court. For Black people, going to family court to solve family problem, who gave us these family courts? Is it not the same people that dismantled our families? So we need to come to that mindset where we can solve our own problems as a Black community. We need to find some elders of the community who are at a certain state of understanding and knowledge that we can go to for certain levels of counseling. I know it's hard to find them, but to go back to the family court to solve your Black people's problem, no, that is the weapon that farm against black families? Why you need to go to the such and such man to get a solution to how to deal with your family? And this is one of the things I cannot understand with a lot of people. Like, okay, two people separated, right? Why you cannot come to a simple common agreement to say, okay, you know what, you're gonna keep the child for 2 weeks, and then every 2 weeks we rotate. If there's any circumstance, anything, any event happening that you might need the child, you might need not to have the child in the time that you're supposed to have the child, you're supposed to come to an agreement to say, hey, next week, guess what, I have a certain appointment such and such, so I need you to pick up the child for that day, and you guys can settle that dispute. You don't need the European to come to that agreement for you. If you cannot make a 2 weeks agreement arrangement, then at least a month. You keep the child 1 month, the other person keeps the child the other month, and you rotate. Whichever way is more flexible for you, because sometimes there are going to be circumstances where maybe schooling, maybe you guys live in different towns, and the school that the child goes to is closer to one parent. So you know that, okay, this parent is going to keep the child during school days, and then all the holidays and probably weekends or so you can get the child. You can come to that agreement. You do not need the people that dismantled your family to come and tell you how to do these things. It doesn't matter how much we are at odds with each other. That's something we need to come in understanding of. We don't need them to solve these problems. Okay, we're separated. Okay, now we have to serve the greater purpose. What is the greater purpose? The child. How are we going to make this functional? How are we going to create the habitat? How are we going to destroy the barrel and give the child the habitat it needs to survive in, to thrive in, to be functional in? How can we come together? We couldn't come together for each other, right? But how can I cannot be the best husband to you? You could not be the best wife to me. But how can we be the best version of ourselves to him, to her? Why do I need to spite you, and in spiting you, the child is suffering? Why do you need to spite me, and in spiting me, the child is suffering? Because most of the times when the man and the woman are at war, it's really the child who suffers the most. I know a lot of people are in these situations. The parents are at war and the children are just suffering. Everything that they do to spite each other is really spiting the children. And this is why I said earlier, if you don't know the purpose of something, you are going to abuse it. You're going to destroy it. Right? Now let me read. You mentioned about earlier about the scattering and so forth. I'm going to read Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to start at 54. These are the curses. It says, so that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eyes shall be evil toward his brother and toward the wife of his bosom. You can imagine that? Toward the wife of his bosom. It says, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave, even towards his own children. So you see what these people did to us in slavery? What they told us was a transatlantic slave trade, which we know it was a war. It was a race war, not a trade. They were not trading slaves. No, they did not leave Europe to come and trade slaves. It was a race war, right? Here it says, so that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left him in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in all thy gates. 56 says, the tender and delicate woman among you, tender and delicate, women are tender and delicate. Here what happens, it says, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness. She's so delicate that she wouldn't even do such things, right? It says, her eyes shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter. Do we not see these things playing out? Look at the black communities. The black communities they are the barrels, and we are the crabs. Because let me finish this verse first. It says, For she shall eat them for want of all things secretly in the siege and straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee in thy gates. All of this took place, all of this happened to us. We're destroyed mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. Matter of fact, let me just jump up to verse 48. It says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things, whether you want school, whether you want church to worship whatever God, whatever, anything that you want. It says we would serve our enemies. Who did we serve when we get off those slave ships? What nation of people were we serving? Because the Bible calls them our enemies, right? It says, here comes, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Destroyed us how? Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, every way you can think of, even physically. Because remember when we were getting off slave ships, what the people used to do? Run away. But when those chains hang about our necks, why did they remove the chains? You remember when they were gonna fight a certain war in the Buffalo Soldiers? Why were they so comfortable to take off the chains off the people's neck? Is because we were destroyed at that point. Yeah, let me just turn off and you can go ahead and speak.
Yes, I was saying that by that point we were already mentally broken, and so the chance of us trying to escape would have been less. And they've proved that by, there's this analogy about the elephant that's been chained to a stake from a baby, and after trying so many times to escape because the chain was so tight, the elephant eventually gave up. So when they removed that chain, the elephant will never try to run away because mentally it's already been convinced that he cannot go beyond a certain point. So it's basically breaking the spirit.
This is why I said we were destroyed and all these other aspects. Because let me show you something. I'm gonna go to the book of Psalms 83 and start in verse 2. It says, for lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel. Remember in the book of Exodus, the Egyptians did the same things. Start telling the nurses to, hey, give birth to the females, but if it's a male, destroy him. Right? All of those were crafty counsels, right? Here comes, it says, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So this is very important, because guess what? India went through slavery. What they did not go through was this hard bondage that we went through, because Indians kept their identity. The only people that don't know who they are is us, black folks. We don't know who we are. Okay, let's look at this. When a European comes here, you can say that's a Caucasian. They come here and they still retain their identity. When the Koreans come here, you still call them Koreans. They still call themselves Koreans. So the question is, when all the nations travel, they get to travel with their identity. But when black folks travel, our identities are left somewhere else. Why is that? Why is it that we cannot keep our identities when we travel? Okay, you're in Jamaica now, you're a Jamaican. But now you move to America to live, now you become an American. Right? Now you move from there to another place. The identity, why does our identity change every time we travel? The Koreans are still Koreans when they come to Jamaica, and if they leave Jamaica, go to Canada, they are still Koreans. The Chinese are Chinese anywhere they go. The Indians are Indians anywhere they go. The Caucasians are Caucasians anywhere they go. So the question is, why? We don't keep our identities when we travel. You see, it says, come, let us cut them off from being a nation because of what they put us through. They destroyed us. They destroyed our language, our culture, our God, the foods we eat, our ways of worship. They destroyed everything about us. So we cannot even remember that we were a nation. So this is why, for example, if you should tell somebody that you're an Israelite, they're going to start thinking, no, Israelite are the white people in Israel. No, they are called Israeli. You never hear they call themselves Israelite. They're Israeli. They're called Jewish. You never hear they call themselves Jews. Why? The Bible never said anything about Israeli. The Bible never said anything about Jewish. So why is it that we cannot see that, hey, something is not adding up? That region there, West Asia, or Africa, if you want to call it, whichever one you want to call it Africa or West Asia, whichever one you want to call it, because there's no such continent as Middle East. Middle East, Middle East is not a continent, right? Europe, I think Australia, North America, Asia, Africa, and then you have, Americas, you have South and so forth. But Middle East is not a continent. So why do we even refer to that when we're talking in the context of continent? Good morning. I hope you're having a good day. No, it's not a debate. We're just having an open discussion, talking about how they dismantle like our families and so forth. Trippy. We're just having an yeah. Are you familiar with such history? You have something you would like to share with us? Would you like to be a part of the conversation? Respectfully. So yes, they don't allow us to travel with our identity, and all of this was for an intended purpose, because if we should know who we are as a people, it would have changed a lot of things. And this is why it says here that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. So guess what? When you hear black people say, oh, I'm from Africa, the one place you would never hear a black man say he's from. No, I'm not knowledgeable enough to throw in my 2 cents. I'm happy to sit back and listen and learn. All right, no problem, Trippy. When you hear a black man say he's from Africa, the one place he would never say he's from is the land of Israel.
Yeah, I find it to be very interesting. When I think about it, the whole idea.
Black image. Yeah, go ahead. Hold on.
That you froze up a while ago. I thought you had muted the mic. No, I was just saying that's what I was thinking about, the whole idea of us not retaining our identity. And it's because it's been stripped away from us so far back that people are grasping at straws right now. And, what we do is tend to latch on to almost anything out there.
Black man has been without an image. Black man has been without a God for ever so long. So anything black, people will gravitate and start attaching themselves to. So that's why you see a lot of men even start to step out of the church from back in the days, because they start to realize, but wait, there's nothing here for me as a black man. Nothing is black in the churches, in the black churches anymore. The black churches aren't black. So men are coming into that consciousness and they're stepping back. So again, with men stepping back, also more women are doing what? Being pushed in the forefront. So in the last probably 20 years or so, you see more women start doing what? Being at the pulpit. So because if you should even go back to the scriptures, women, that was never a position given to a woman to lead a congregation. You can lead a group of sisters, because remember, you have many prophetess. But the question is, do prophetess lead congregations, or do they minister to women and children and other things? They don't lead in a congregation is different. You don't lead a congregation of men. The Most High can use you for an intended purpose to fulfill a certain will. Like the Most High wants to get rid of a certain company that goes to war with Israel. He can, cause the woman to do whatever she's doing to use to kind of seduce the man with the beauty and make him drop his guard, and he can go and kill that general. You saw that in the book of Judith. I think, I don't remember if it was Deborah that did that, where she dropped the stone and the general and so forth. So time to time, the Most High will use women to fulfill certain things, but is not leading a congregation. So I'm not disputing, because you know how some people are when they hear certain things. I'm not saying women don't have certain capabilities. I'm just saying the Most High do not use them to lead congregation. And this is why you see, even in the churches, most people don't go back to the law, because guess what? The law gives the specifications on what to do, so everybody can be clear to their purpose. So even the priests, they had certain laws that they had to follow. So guess what? You cannot be a from a certain tribe and you're leading the congregation. No, the congregation is not, even the Levites. You couldn't just be a Levite and you lead the congregation. You had to come from the lines of who? Aaron the priest. So Eleazar, his son, and there's another son that he had, because two of them died. So you had to come out of that line. So you cannot, Moses' son could not be a priest. So this is why it talks about the carnal commandment. Let me see if I can find the scriptures talking about the carnal commandment, so we can understand how the Most High operates. Right? This is Hebrews 7. Hebrews chapter 7. Verse 16. For there is verily hold on, where is it? Okay, let me start at 15. It says, and it is yet far more evident, for that after the similitude of Melchizedek there ariseth another priest, who is made not after the law of a carnal commandment. What is the carnal commandment? The carnal commandment was that, okay, you're going to come through the lines of Aaron. That is it doesn't mean that the law itself is carnal, because we know from Romans chapter 7, it says the law is spiritual. So the carnal commandment is what? You have to come through the lines, because the Most High always uses nature to produce or to fulfill his will. So you have to come out of the lines of who? Aaron, to be a priest. This is why, this, as great as Moses was, his sons were never priests. So that was the carnal commandment. You came through this the lines of Aaron. You understand that?
Yes.
So right. So the Most High has a specific way that how he operates, how he gets things done. So for a woman to be a priest, that is far from even the law. So this is why in the churches, most of them don't teach the Old Testament, because if you go to the Old Testament, it's going to bring you to what? It's going to bring you to the instructions of the Most High. Let's read the book of John chapter 5. I think it's verse 35 I want. It says, no, that's not it. Okay, the scripture I want is when it says, he shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free, right? Now, what is truth? According to the scriptures, because when we speak our words, it causes so much confusion. Oh, he's just talking what he thinks or feel. Let's go to the scripture to see what is truth. This is Psalms 119 and 142. It says, thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is truth. You see what truth is? The law. But why the churches don't go back to the Old Testament? Why they teach the people that it is done away with? If the law is done away with, you know what would also be done away with? Do you know? I'm asking you, Empress. No, sin. Because remember, sin is through the knowledge of the law. Right? For example, if you don't know that drinking the water this way, if you don't know that it is wrong, how can it be attributed as a sin unto you being ignorant of it? Okay, let me go back further. No, it says because of one man sin entered into the world. Sin entered, right? So Adam got the law. So this is why when he does something contrary to what he knows, it is considered as sin. No, if sin entered into the world through Adam, then what about the person that deceived Adam? Why his doings were not considered sin? Because he was not under the covenant, the knowledge that Adam was under. It can only be sin if you recognize it is as such. The tree gave them that discernment. Right, as Triad is saying, you have to recognize it as such. So if you don't tell a person that doing this is wrong, when the person does it, you cannot hold the person accountable to it being wrong or the person willfully doing that. So Adam was in an agreement with the Most High. The serpent, the Phoenicians, because all the nations were there. All the nations were already created at that point, right? So these other people, they were not under the agreement that Adam was under. So now that Adam has the law, guess what? Those other nations, when they go to Adam and manipulate or seduce and cause him to transgress. So you have to be knowledgeable of something for it to be recognized as sin. Otherwise, it's just going to be sin, not intentionally or not willfully. You're doing it in your ignorance. So this is why it's easy for you to show mercy to somebody who does something that they did not know they were supposed to do. We all have got to look within to find and confront our own sins. I just don't see that as bad. Exactly. We have to look internally. So we have to first find ourselves. We have to come to the truth and the consciousness of ourselves, of our existence, of our being. So this is what sin is. If you know that, if you know, for example, you want to change your diet, you say you're gonna stop eating meat and you're gonna eat only vegetables and beans. But you wake up tomorrow and you still go get that burger, you still go get that whatever fast food. That would be considered as sin because you are betraying the knowledge of your intellect. Matter of fact, let's go to the scriptures to get it, because it's First John chapter 3 verse 4. It says, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. Sin is the transgression of truth. So what do you know to be truth is that you're not going to eat fast food anymore. You're just going to eat beans, legumes and so forth. No, you betray that knowledge of your intellect. That is considered a sin. You don't sin against God, but you sin against the knowledge of your own intellect. Let me turn off and you can go ahead.
I'm just reflecting on when Christ was walking the earth, and I think that was the whole purpose of him living the way he lived. It was to kind of lift the veil, I guess, so that people can see things for what they are, because the scribes and the Pharisees were so legalistic in everything. However, they did not appear to be understanding the law the way it was intended to be understood, right? So as a result of that, they were abusing the law and the knowledge thereof. And so I think that's what Christ came to, one of the things that Christ came to accomplish.
It's kind of aligned with what Triad said, but I don't understand. I would like him to expound. Triad said their actions did not change, their perception changed. Triad, I don't know if you'd like to come up and expound a little bit. I did not see that message. We've got look. Yeah, I just see that one. So their perception changed. Probably their outlook. I would rather that you come up and explain that part. So Empress, can you go back and explain what you just said, because I was kind of trying to pair them with what Triad was saying there. What you said about the Christ in that sentence.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that there is an illusion that was afoot. It's still afoot right now. When you were talking about how things had to be in the past, with regards to becoming a priest and all of the things, and now how things are changing or has changed, right? But I'm saying that when I look back, it's like the same thing over and over again, history repeating itself. It's not anything new because it was happening from the time of Christ. So when he came, these very same things were occurring, but he brought shed light on it, and basically showed the stupidity of it all, right? But I'm just saying that it's funny to see things keep repeating themselves.
In itself, this is something that we should I should put out there, because a lot of people use this word, but they don't understand the different cultural context. Prophecy. We have to understand what prophecy is in the Greek culture and what prophecy is in the Hebrew culture. Prophecy in the Greek culture, which is the context most people use today, means what? Okay, I say something today, it happens tomorrow, it is prophecy being fulfilled. That's it in the Greek culture. Prophecy in the Hebrew culture is just what you just explained. History is cyclical. It's cyclical. The earth is like a ring. So the judgment keeps happening over and over. This is why regeneration is possible. You come back in the earth. Matter of fact, let me go get this in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 1. Because you see, most of the Christians, they don't believe in this. It says, I'm going to start at verse 4. It says, one generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. So first thing, the earth is here forever, right? So one generation passes, the next generation comes, the next generation comes, and it comes, right? And it's on a cycle. So the spirits keep coming back. The souls are being reanimated and come back into the earth. I'll soon get to that part. It says, the sun also ariseth, the sun also ariseth, and the sun goeth down, and hasteth to its place where he rose. So guess what? In the spring, the sun rises at 0 degrees east, and it goes around and comes back around till what? It goes back 0 degrees east and start the cycle of the year again. So the Most High is showing us that everything is on a cycle. History is cyclical. This is why a lot of people who are conscious in their spirit, and they don't have to read the Bible to know certain things. You don't. That's the honest truth. But some of us have to be be awoke by what? The hearing of the word. But some of you guys are gonna be connected through visions, through dreams, through trances, whichever way the Most High speaks to your spirit. Okay, I'm gonna accept Rosie Mar. Welcome to the platform. Yeah, go ahead, Empress. Let me just turn off the microphone.
You know, when you said that about the dreams and all of that, I remember I had a dream that I came back to this place where I'm now living, but it's like it's a dream from the past. It happened in the present, or it's weird, but some years ago it happened. Anyway, the gist of the dream was this: I was seeing.
Just make sure checking the last one. Miss 14 items.
Rosemary, can you hear me?
14.
Okay. All right. So in the dream, I was walking down this very road, and I saw my older brother, and I stopped him and I said to him, Andy, that house right there, we're going to buy it in the future, and we're going to live there. And then I went through a portal, and when I went through that portal, I ended up dying somehow. And in the process of dying, instead of fully dying, I ended up back in another body. And in that body, I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to hold this memory. I'm going to remember who I was, and I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to find out if any of my family is still there. And in the same dream, I grew up. I went back to my old place of residence. I saw my brother now. He was older now. And I told him, this is your sister. I had died, but I didn't really die. I went, I was explaining it to him. And so that dream came in response to a question that I had asked God.
It's called switching dimensions, you see, because when you really we're living in a place where we call third and fourth dimension, right? But really, when you go off to the standpoint of the spirit or eternity, because the Most High dwells in eternity, it's really no dimension there. So this is why, for example, when you get a dream, because we live in this dimension, this third dimension, we have to do in what? We have to attribute things to time and space. So when you get a dream, the first thing you want to say is going to happen this time, within this time. No. what you just saw was beyond time. And this is why a lot of you guys come off as false prophets and prophetess, because when you get a certain vision, you are trying to put it within a time frame. Oh, by next year, this type of destruction is going to happen. The next 6 months, this is going to happen. No.
No, I want to understand, in the dream, it's a dream within a dream that happened, so I wasn't saying it to my brother in real life that this is going to happen, because it had already happened. But it's like I'm already living in the place that happened, but it's like I traveled back in time in my dream. And in my dream, I saw my brother and told him we're going to be living here. And then I traveled forward in time. So, and when I thought I would be waking up, I instead woke up in another dream. So in the dream is when I saw my brother and told him that in the future we're going to live here, but I was already living here already. So it's as if God took me on a journey through time, something that I may not have really remembered happening, but you understand what I'm saying? So I didn't say it to him in real time. It was in the dream within the dream. I said that to him.
On the standpoint of here, I was doing it in general now, where a lot of people get these dreams, but because they don't understand it, the mind wants to fit it into what you call time and space. Remember, the Most High dwells in eternity. Eternity is beyond time and space, right? So when these people get dreams and visions, they want to fit it within time frame. So when you go and tell somebody that, hey, this is going to happen next year, the prophecy does not happen at the time that that person is thinking. So it seems as if they're false prophets. No, you're not false prophet. You just don't understand time lapse. This is the third dimension. It runs by time. Eternity is beyond time. So the Most High dwells in the eternal now. He dwells in eternity. Now is not a place in time. Now is beyond time. Time is just a concept of the human mind. So I'm not referring to that in the context of your dream or say you said anything. I was just talking in general. Right. So that's something that we have to understand. So yes, the Most High speak to us in that because the flesh is too corrupt for him to come to us in this way. So when we're in the sleep, in the dream world, the souls, this is where he comes. He meets us in that portal. So that switching of dimensions, I understand exactly what you're saying regarding that. That's where we meet. This is where you meet the Most High. In the realms of the soul. The flesh is too corrupted for him. So let me just go back and finish this cycling of what I was showing. It says, the wind goeth toward the south, and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again to his circuits. So you see, everything is on a cycle. This is why I said it is cyclical, right? Including the souls of man, because we're dealing with regeneration. I'm going to show you all these things, right? It says, all the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full, and unto the place from whence the rivers come thither they return again. So it's what? It's a cycle. It says, and all things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Listen to this verse. It says, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, right? And that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. You remember you mentioned there's no new thing under the sun? You remember that?
Yes.
Okay, now, so it says, that which shall be, okay, let me just read it again. Because I want you to see what the scripture is saying. I don't want to say it, I want you to internalize it. It says, the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Now listen to this passage. This is chapter 6, the same book, verse 10. It says, that which hath been is named already, and it is known that it is man. You understand what he's saying? Remember around there, it talks about that which shall be is that which is done already. No new thing under the sun. So you cannot look at a baby that just came out of the womb and say, this is new. It is not. There is no new thing under the sun. because what regeneration is biblical. You know, people call in other nations, they'll say reincarnation. We don't use that term because reincarnation in their concepts mean that you can come back as a rat, come back as a dog, and you evolve. We don't believe in evolution. And I'm going to get to the scriptures of dealing with evolution, because in our culture that does not exist, but we deal with regeneration. This is where the souls are reanimated, come back into a body. Now let's go to the book of John. Let's go to the book of John, chapter 9. Listen to the passage. It says, and as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. I need you to listen to the word carefully. The man was blind from his birth. Birth meaning that you come out of the womb. So the man was blind from that point. Now listen to the disciples. It says, and his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin? This man that was blind from birth. Listen. This man or his parents, that he was born blind. Let's see if the Messiah condemned his question. It says, verse 3, Jesus answered, neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. Now let's back up a little bit. Neither hath this man sinned. This man. Right? So what is it saying? They all understood that regeneration was a normal thing. Otherwise, he would say to the disciples, you're so fool. How can you ask if this man sinned? Because they understand that you can sin in your last life and you come back to live the judgment of it. But in this case, what's different is it was just to manifest the works of God. Why would the disciples ask, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? When would he have committed this sin for him to be born blind? Go ahead.
I just find it funny because that flew over my head so many times, because you see that part about this man, I didn't view it in the context of him being blinded from birth. I was viewing it the way how they typically teach it in church, which is to say, did he sin sometime throughout his lifetime? But then I missed the whole point of the fact that he was blind from birth. And so I'm wondering how many scriptures there are that allude to the fact that there is regeneration, that they don't focus on the way it's supposed to be focused on. Because when I asked the question when I used to visit churches, I was always told that I'm treading on dangerous ground, so I would never get a straight answer.
That belief system, that is the tree that we are under right now. Everybody is shadowing under the tree of Christianity, right? So even when you're reading the Bible, Christianity is that lens that you put on to read the Bible. So what you're looking at is not what you're seeing. You're seeing the belief system of Christianity. So when you read it with the same things. This is why many people, when they read that passage, they cannot see it. That's the veil. Christianity is a veil. And when I say Christianity, I'm talking about the Western world, the Western belief system. I'm talking all of that. So whether you're in the church, you're out of the church, it's going to be the same thing, because we're under that Western philosophical system. So that's what we're reading with, right? Now, back to what I was saying about evolution. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and I'm going to start at verse 35. It says, but some man will say, how are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come? Right? Paul says, thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. This is good to understand natural things, farming, agriculture, to see, because the natural things is, when you look deeper, you can see the spiritual things behind it, right? It says, thou fool, that which thou sowest is not quickened except it die. And that which thou sowest not that body, that shall be, but bear grain, it may chance of wheat or some other grain. Like for example, you plant your onion, but you don't, it grows scallion instead of onion, right? So you did not give it the body of the scallion, you just plant that thing. So this is giving you an analogy, right? Now it says, But God giveth it a body as it hath pleased him. So you do not fashion the body of the plant. You do not fashion the body of, you do not even fashion the body of the child. Your egg and the man's, seed get together and, all of that. You don't fashion the body though, right? Now it says, all flesh is not the same flesh. So this is why we don't believe in reincarnation. We follow regeneration. All flesh is not the same flesh. It says, but there's one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of beasts. So no, you were not a rat, you were not a dog, you were not a panther. No, all flesh are not the same flesh. So you were not a monkey, a gorilla, then you turn into a man. All flesh is not the same flesh. So we don't follow those philosophies of reincarnation. This is why we say regeneration, right? It says, another of fishes and another of birds. So this one does not evolve into another. These are two different manner of animals, different manner of flesh, body, right? It says, there are also celestial bodies and bodies terrestrial. So these are dealing with dimensions, right? It says, there is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars. For one star differeth from another star in glory. In glory. So, what is the glory of the sun and the moon and the stars? The light is the glory. So the light of the moon is independent of the what? Of the light of the sun. In Western science, they say the moon get the light from the sun. You heard them taught that in science class, right? And a lot of people believe in that philosophy today, that the moon gets the light from the sun. Okay, let's say hypothetically the moon get the light from the sun, right? If you understand the moon, after 14 days it goes dark for a minimum of 3 days and 3 nights, right? If the moon gets the light from the sun is still shining within those 3 days. Why the moon does not get light from the sun within those 3 days? So you see, the Western philosophies, why don't they tell people this? This is very true. Things don't have to happen when you think it will. Why they don't tell people this? Because the thing is to keep the people's mind captive. The people are spiritually oppressed, but they don't know. They took us from one culture and gave us a philosophy that goes contrary to what the Most High created. And this is why I said, when you go back to the Hebrew language is the DNA of creation, because everything, you can break down the letters of the Hebrew language and you see the reality. You remember in the last discussion when I said the only language that was close to the Hebrew was the chemical language, because H2O, you know exactly that it carries such and such hydrogen and such molecule of oxygen. It tells you what is inside of it. So it's the same thing with the Hebrew language. Now, the English language is totally opposite from what you're talking about. The words that come out of your mouth, it goes contrary to the reality of what you're talking about. Right? Let's get to this. Let's finish off with this. Let's get to marriage, for example. What is marriage? What do we refer to as marriage? And who is marriage for? Marriage is between a man and a woman in the sight of the Most High, in the sight of reality. It's a union between a male and a female. Male and female created he, them. Right? So that's the balance. Right? Now let's listen. This is Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 30. It says, if a man also lie with mankind. So from the Hebraic standpoint, a man can only lie with. In this Western culture, English culture, you know what they say? Man marriage, same gender marriage. No, if the marriage is between two opposites, two polar opposites, how can you put two same things together and you get the same word? So you see how they use the English language to change times and laws, change narratives? So this is why when you're reading the Bible from the English cultural thought process, you have so much problems to understand what you're seeing, because what you're thinking when you use the words is not the reality, is not the same reality described in the scriptures. So no, in reality, a man can only lie with another man, but you cannot marry another man, because marry is about two polar opposites coming together. For example, if you have two left foot of shoe, do you ever say you have a pair of shoe? Do you ever even make the mistake of saying that you have a pair of shoe? No, you never. So you see, it goes back to the same thing. It's two pole. When you understand the nature of consciousness, when you understand the nature of the Most High, you understand that it's two polar opposite that makes the one. The Most High is one, but it's still divided. But it's still one. Deuteronomy chapter, what is it? 4 verse 6 or 6 verse 4? Let me see. Maybe it's 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. He is one. But you have to understand that consciousness is divided in two. So guess what? If it wasn't for day, you would not have known night. If it wasn't for good, you would not have known evil. It has to be two polar opposites, and that's how you understand the nature of the Most High. So what they do with this Western philosophy or Christian culture, they teach you one potent or one aspect of the Most High. So guess what? You're gonna be dysfunctional because you need to know the polar opposites. So you can never come to the fullness of what you call Christ. You can never come to the fullness of God until you start to see the Most High this way, one thing balancing the other. You're always going to have problem with your God. And this is why when somebody use the word God to you, it's important for you to ask the person what is their understanding of the word God, because the first thing your mind is going to tell you is that we share the same common understanding. And then you find out that you guys are debating and don't even know what you're debating about, why you're debating with this person, when the person's concept of God is totally different from your concept of God. Their concept is founded mostly on a Western ideology. It has nothing to do with reality. Nothing. So you don't want to engage in pointless debates or pointless, unfruitful conversations just by you having a different point. The person has a different point, and you don't know what you're even doing or why you're even doing what you're doing. This is why some people can say God does not exist. Because what? In their heads, in a lot of people's heads, they already carry a belief. God is this, is a man, is a spirit, is the all types of concept. And they've tried to personify God. And then that's where the problem is. The moment you personify God, you already have a problem. Because people don't understand that male and female is different from masculine and feminine. Male and female is different from masculine and feminine. The Hebrew language does not carry a neutral gender. Like, for example, in English, you refer to the glass as it. Like he referring to the male, she referring to the female, but something neutral, you refer to it as it. In Hebrew language, it does not carry that neutral gender. Everything is either masculine or feminine. He said that in the beginning, male or female. So this is why when he refers to spirit, spirit is a Hebrew word, what you say, ruach. Spirit takes on the feminine gender. So this is why when he talks about wisdom, wisdom is referred to in the context of a woman. Patience is a spirit, is referred to because the spirit itself is feminine. You don't put it under it. Kingdom is a feminine word. You don't put it under, and it's not going to be in the male form or masculine form. It's going to be under the feminine gender. So we don't understand what English language does to the realities of God. We don't understand what English language does to the original Hebrew language. It kills the reality in it. Just like, for example, now when you look at the animals that they're modifying, they modify the bees, and when those bees goes, they can attack the natural bees, and they kill the reality in those things. That's the same thing that they do with the language, with the culture. They're using these philosophies to destroy the ancient culture. Matter of fact, let's get that in the book of Daniel chapter, what is it, 9 verse 25? Or is it 7?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead. Let me turn off.
Yeah, I was just saying to you that when I'm reading the Bible, it's a constant struggle because it's like as you're mentioning, I'm reading it and I'm understanding it in the English context, but then I also understand that there's depth to it and I needed to go deeper. So a lot of the times, it's like I have to be switching in my mind the interpretation thereof because I'm still transitioning out of where I'm coming from.
Back to the ancient culture and the ancient language. And when I say ancient language, I don't mean in the context that you need to speak fluent Hebrew. I'm just saying that we need to understand the realities of God. That's all. You don't have to speak fluent Hebrew, but you need to think, to at least think in the thought process of the ancient culture. This is why, remember we mentioned earlier about the curses, right? And it says, until they destroyed us, we are so destroyed that even but then they would take away the Bible from us. We were not allowed to read because we would still have the ancient ways of thinking. But now that we are destroyed, giving us the Bible, sending us to schools cannot do anything because we are now demoralized. That's what they did to us. We are demoralized to the point where reality does not mean anything. So at the end of the day, you can bring all the evidence to the person to say this is water. You taste it, you let the person taste it, you touch it, whatever it. No sound. What's happening? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Rosemary, my sound is working, so I don't know why you say that. Maybe you have to check your connection then. Right. So what I'm saying is this is what they did to us. They demoralized us to the point where reality doesn't matter. So this is why when you tell a person that no, there's no such thought as same gender marriage. Marriage can only be between two polar opposites, a male and a female. Right? So you're not really struggling with what is written in the book. The person is really struggling internally with their belief system, with their thought process. So that's the war is within. The war is not without, it's within. So until we start to understand that, okay, the English language is the weapon formed against the realities of God. This is the book of Daniel, chapter 25. It says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. Let me put it in another way. And think to change times and narratives. That is what the laws is, because the law is truth. So when it says a man can only lie with another man, that's the truth. But they can change that now and say, no, a man can marry a next man. A woman can marry another woman. A man can marry a beast. No, the word marry does not fit in that sentence. You see, in the English and the Western world, it seems appropriate, but if you should go back to the ancient Hebrew culture, you could never have that thought existing in the mind. So you see how much we have to work on ourselves, because we have to work on the demoralization part first. And most of the people, this is why most of the times, even when I talk, it doesn't matter how simple I try to explain things, it's hard for the average person to understand what I'm saying. They cannot understand because the words that they link is just to a concept. When I link words, I refer to a reality. So if I'm saying something, there's something tangible that you can understand that I'm talking about. If I said to you weeks, you know that I'm talking about the moon. If I said to you day, you know that I'm talking to you from the period about the dawn to dusk. Not 24 hour. The night is not the day. It's a polar opposite. So this is why it's so hard for people to understand me. It's not that something is wrong with what I'm saying. I'm just saying that their perception is locked to the Western way of thinking, and they cannot think outside of the perimeters of the English culture. So it just seems that, the scripture says, if you speak into whatever a fool, it's like you're worse than them. So when I talk, sometimes if a person don't try to, subdue their beliefs for a moment and listen to what I'm saying, it's going to be like, what the hell is this man talking? He's blaspheming. That's how it is. That's how it comes off. People are not accustomed to the Bible being taught in its original cultural thought process. They're still teaching it, but within the concepts of the Western philosophies. This is why they'll, okay, where does God dwell according to Western philosophies or Christianity? Then put it that way. Where's God? In heaven. Can you find a scripture that says God is in heaven? Tell.
The contrary is the opposite.
Hold on, let me turn off the microphone so I can hear you.
I'm just saying, on the contrary, it says the very opposite. It says the very opposite. It said that if you're seeking the kingdom of God, if you're seeking God in certain places, you're not going to find God there.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone.
Welcome to the platform. We're just having an open discussion. I guess you might have been following. You can go ahead and speak if you want to add something to what we are saying right there.